You're watching Dad's Revenge Tales, and I'm grateful that you chose to spend your time here. Before we begin, leave a comment telling me your country or city. I'd love to know where this story reaches you from. Also, please remember this story includes fictional details created for entertainment and learning. Any similarity to names or places is purely coincidental. But the lesson is valuable. My son looked me dead in the eye at the dinner table and told me I wasn't classy enough to attend his wedding. Just let me enjoy my big day, so I didn't go. That evening, every news channel was replaying the moment the bride slapped him right in front of hundreds of guests. I quietly took a sip of my tea and smiled. I knew exactly what had happened, and I had known long before it even occurred. My name is Walter Grayson. I am 63 years old. I live alone on Clover Street in Denton, Ohio. 41 years of working with my hands taught me one thing. Most broken things aren't actually broken. They're just neglected. You clean them out and put them back together right, and 9 times out of 10 they run just fine. I wished people were that simple. I had spent 30 years opening a machine shop at 6:30 sharp. 4 years ago, I sold it quiet and honest to a younger man named Paul. My neighbor Dorothy Simmons, a widow for 11 years. Still showed up some mornings with banana bread wrapped warm in a kitchen towel. She asked about my son Ethan. He was getting married in 10 days. Big wedding, fancy venue in Columbus. The girl's family had money. My phone buzzed that morning. A text from Ethan, Friday 7 o'clock Brennan's Steakhouse on High Street. Don't be late, Dad. No hope you can make it. No looking forward to seeing you. Just an order. Brennan's was the kind of place that printed menus without prices. I wore my navy blazer, the one Margaret picked out for me before she passed. Ethan stood when he saw me, but it was a reflex, not a feeling. His fiancée, Claire Whitfield, was polished and pretty and kind enough in the careful way people are trained to be. Her mother, Margaret Whitfield, looked at my blazer once and decided everything she needed to know about me. For an hour, Ethan talked about the venue, the flowers, the guest list, business associates and investors. When Claire's mother asked about my background, Ethan answered for me. Dad's basically retired. Took it easy after the shop closed down. The shop didn't close. I sold it, but I let it pass. Then the plates were cleared. Ethan slid a thick cream envelope across the tablecloth like a bill you hand someone on their way out. Inside were 2 sheets of paper. The first was an itemized receipt for my own dinner. $72 for the steak, $18 for the potatoes, $9 for the tea, $13 in service charges, $112 total. My son had billed me for my own meal. The second sheet was a letter, formal, printed, requesting my absence from his wedding. Claire's family was accustomed to a certain standard of guest. My presence, given my lifestyle, would create an uncomfortable dynamic he wasn't willing to risk on his special day. He wrote special day twice, like once wasn't enough to remind me my feelings mattered less than his flowers. I folded both sheets and slid them into my breast pocket, right over my heart. Then I raised my hand for the waiter, handed him $400 cash, told him to cover the whole table and keep the rest. Ethan stared at the space where the money had been. Then he looked at me and said, Dad, please just let me enjoy my special day. I stood, buttoned my blazer, and told him to enjoy his wedding, that I hoped everything went exactly the way he'd planned it. Then I walked out and didn't look back. I sat in my truck for 22 minutes before I could make my hands work the key. I read that letter again under the dome light, refinement, he'd called it. My presence would introduce an element of discomfort. I thought about him at 16, ashamed the moment he saw my work truck pull up. At 22, not inviting me to his graduation. It's a small ceremony, Dad, honestly not worth the drive. At 28, introducing me to a colleague as in retirement, like I'd quietly stopped mattering. And now at 31. Handing his own father a bill a few weeks before that dinner. Ethan had dropped off 3 boxes in my garage, said he was clearing space before the move into Claire's family's house. Told me not to bother going through them, just store them. 1 box had slid open on my workbench while I was making room, and inside were printed messages between Ethan and a woman who wasn't Claire. Dated, specific, unmistakable, along with a small velvet box holding a ring that wasn't the one he'd proposed with. I hadn't gone looking for it. I want to be honest about that. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it, and I sat with it a long time trying to decide what a father owes a son who no longer wants him in the room. I decided I owed him nothing. But I decided I owed Claire the truth, not out of spite, but because somebody's daughter deserved to know what she was walking into. I didn't call her. I didn't want a scene of my own making. I packaged copies of everything into a plain envelope with no note except one line. Ask him about the second box he stored in my garage, and I mailed it to her a week before the wedding. Addressed by hand, then I went back to my mower and my rose bushes, and I waited the way you wait after you've done the only honest thing left to do on the day of the wedding. I stayed home. Dorothy brought coffee instead of banana bread that morning. She didn't ask why I wasn't dressed for anything. She just sat with me on the porch while the board under our feet gave its familiar creak. That evening, the television in my living room was already on when the story broke. Cameras outside a Columbus venue. A bride in white walking briskly through a stunned crowd. Her new husband chasing after her, and the sound sharp and clean. Of her hand meeting his face in front of every business associate and investor he'd ever wanted to impress. The anchor called it shocking, called it a scandal. Guests were already saying online that the bride had confronted the groom with printed messages before the vows were even finished. That she'd asked him one question in front of 200 people, and he hadn't been able to answer it. I turned the volume down. I poured myself a cup of tea. And I sat in my chair by the window where Margaret used to sit. My chest didn't ache the way it had in that parking garage. It felt quiet instead. The kind of quiet that comes after a machine finally runs the way it's supposed to. I never told Ethan what I did. I don't know if I ever will. Some things aren't worth the argument they'd start. But I think about Margaret's words more now than I ever did before. You can't make someone love you the way you need to be loved. You can only decide what you're going to do with the love you have left. I gave my son 41 years of my hands and my honesty. I couldn't give him a wedding he didn't want me at. But I could give his bride the one thing nobody else in that fancy restaurant was willing to give her, the truth. And sometimes that's the only kind of revenge a father needs. If this story meant something to you, tell me where you're watching from, and remember, the people who make you feel small at their table are usually the ones most afraid of what you already know.